All right, hey, we got episode 356, live recording here, episode 356 of the Church Digital podcast. Jeff here, excited. You know what? I have been wanting to have this conversation today. And if I were to say for months, like that's not an exaggeration. It just seems like every time I try to schedule a conversation, and the majority of the time was my fault. Like I'm not throwing Jake under the bus here. Like just stuff always seemed to pop up, and even today, you know, some stuff came up, and I was like, no, I am not canceling on Jake again. We're gonna make this work, and so I'm excited to bring Jake Carlson into the conversation from Apologist Project here in a minute. But before I get there, everybody, quick heads up, and this is not a quick heads up. You may have heard of this small little thing we're doing called the Digital Missionary Conference. And so we did a conference back in April. 1,500 people from around the country, around the world came in. 85 countries registered to attend this thing. It was incredible. 1,100 people showed up day of. We had so much success and so much interest and so much excitement in this thing. We did it another time. We're doing it coming up here in September and October. As a matter of fact, maybe we went a little crazy. We're doing 4 conferences in 4 subsequent weeks. Yeah, okay, it is a little crazy. But the good news is you get plenty of insight coming up in September, October. Here's the deal. We're doing 4 conferences. The first one, September 17th, Digital Neighborhoods, Digital Discipleship, digital church planting, digital cultures in these platforms. This is what we're going to get talking about in the September 17th Digital Neighborhoods Conference. September 24th is going to be Control, Alt, Recover. What does recovery look like in digital and virtual spaces? October 1st is all about our European friends, the European Digital Missionary Summit. And then October 8th is going to be the Gaming Summit. And so everything's centered around church inside video games, church in Discord, being missional in gaming spaces and using gaming tools inside gaming culture. Some really fascinating opportunities coming up. Listen, with the first conference, we went really big and we tried to do something for everybody. And here with these conferences coming up, with these summits, we're making it much more niched, much more nuanced, to be very specific for individuals. So if you're someone that's interested in understanding how to be a digital missionary, that's the September 17th one, Neighborhoods. If you're curious how recovery looks like and how to do ministry with people that are struggling with addiction in digital spaces, well, that's Control, Alt, Recover. If you're on the 24th, if you're in Europe and are curious what God is doing digitally in Europe, well, you got to come to the October 1st one. And then if you're interested at all in reaching people in gaming spaces, come to the October 8th. More information on all of this is going to be on the website missionary.digital, www.missionary.digital. And so if you haven't registered yet, go register. And then the next thing I need you to do, real quick, go to the website share, share.missionary.digital. We need your help to get the word out on these conferences, and we would love you to grab some graphics, post them on social media, post them in the digital communities, post them in the places where you hang out digitally and virtually, and invite people to join you for these conferences. What we're discovering more and more is that the type of people that we're training to be digital missionaries are not seminary trained, they're just normal people. And so how many normal people do you know that might be interested in being a digital missionary and sharing Jesus online? What a great concept. Maybe you can invite someone to these conferences so that they can maybe discover a digital calling and start to help you even doing ministry as God has called you to as well. So more information at the website, www.missionary.digital, for the conferences and the media kits where you can share all the graphics at the website share, share.missionary.digital. Well, you know what? I always hate the announcement part of this because I got to talk really fast to get all the info in, because I really don't want to disrespect the guests and what's coming up here in the conversation. And so I'm excited here to push a button and bring on Jake Carlson, who is the founder of Apologist Project. And so, Jake, once again, thank you for jumping on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be here, Jeff.
I got to tell you, just right off the bat, I was talking to Jake off air, and seeing the drum kit right behind him is like, that is just an awesome reveal. It's an awesome backdrop. My son last night, he was playing his bass guitar through the bass amp. It was kind of reverberating the windows here, and I was happy. I love me a subwoofer. Like that's my happy place. I'm so happy my son chose on his own to play bass guitar because it's my favorite instrument by far. But if he would have brought home a drum kit and said, "Daddy, I want to play this," I think he'd be sleeping somewhere else. So. Is this your drum kit or is this someone else's? Like, what's the story?
Yeah, so this is my kit. It's actually not to get too geeky on it, but it's basically it's an electronic kit, but it's meant to look like an acoustic kit. So it's got full volume, drums and everything like that, and the heads and all the rest. But it's fully digital, and I can play like rhythm games with it and stuff like that. So it's actually
awesome. Yeah, now that I look, I see the brain for the electric drum kit right over your shoulder, right there. So very cool. It looks so authentic, I guess is the right word. It didn't even occur to me it was a digital. And I work with that stuff for like a living. And so congratulations, you faked me out there a little bit. I do see some of the cables coming off like underneath the yeah. So okay, all right. You pulled it over on me. Very cool. Well, hey, Jake, let's dig in here. We do want to get into Apologist. Apologist.ai is doing some incredible work sharing Jesus online, artificial intelligence. Like, we're going to get into this here in a little bit. But Jake, maybe back up a little bit. Apologist Project, like, how did you get here founding this organization? What's the calling? What's the story? Like, give us some background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually grew up as a missionary kid in China. And so obviously saw my parents, kind of witnessing there through, English camps and various other means. And so I kind of got the bug early on for evangelism. And growing up, I went to actually a private Christian school over in China with American curriculum. And through that, had, worldview studies and so forth. So got really interested in apologetics specifically. And for anyone who's not aware what apologetics is, sometimes I have to explain it. But basically, it's not apologizing for things, but it's essentially having a reasoned kind of defense, a rational defense for the Christian faith, right? Because I'm sure as most of your listeners are aware, we would say Christianity is it doesn't conflict with reason, right? It actually has a cohesive revelation for a cohesive kind of worldview and everything like that. So anyway, coming out of high school and early college, was really interested in apologetics. And way back then in, kind of 2001, I'm kind of dating myself a little bit here, but nascent stages of the internet, saw a lot of philosophical discourse, but primarily the early adopters on the internet, with some exceptions, were kind of more of the naturalistic philosophy. And so I made myself a promise, and also a promise to God during that time, 25 years ago, that I would one day raise on some kind of digital platform for apologetics. So way back then, got Apologist.com and kept it to this day, and fast forward a little bit, I had a career about 25 years in technology, working for a bunch of startups and also some big tech companies like Oracle and Apple. And I've been waiting for a chance. I shouldn't say waiting. I should say I've been a little derelict in my promise to the Lord a little bit. And but back in 2023, I finally, thought, now's the time. I had just left my most recent startup at that point. And ChatGPT was taking over the world by storm with conversational AI. And I thought to myself, this is too big of an opportunity to ignore. We have to use conversational AI to fulfill the Great Commission, or at least help fulfill the Great Commission as a tool. And so in 2023, started up the nonprofit. We did a quick prototype, went to a hackathon. That went pretty well. And since then, we've, I'll get into kind of the more details of the product and stuff and everything like that a little bit later in the program. But suffice it to say, we've been kind of growing and partnering with various ministries and trying to spread the kingdom any way we can by melding kind of my technology background with my, desire to see the Great Commission fulfilled.
Yeah, I love the line of being derelict, where it's like you had the calling and then it got shuffled under the bed and priorities kind of kicked in. I'm going to be a little aggressive here. Do you mind telling the story or what that was like? What was the wake up call for you?
I don't know that there was a moment in time per se that, I got hit upside the head. It was more like, that was during the tech layoffs. And so, I think that timing was, God kind of giving me a kick in the butt saying like, okay, like, yeah, you're looking for a new job, but there's this thing that I tried to, like, every decade I would like spin up like a new like project and like try to start it and stuff like that, but something would get in the way. And so I think that exact timing, God's timing is perfect. And so I think that was his little nudge saying like, okay, what's your excuse now? Go do it.
I love that. Ran out of excuses. Well, let's dig in here a little bit. Talk to us about specifically what Apologist project, Apologist.ai, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so essentially we build conversational AIs for Christian evangelism and discipleship. And what that looks like, I can kind of go through the history a little bit, but what it initially looked like is, hey, can we build a conversational AI that somebody could go to, just like ChatGPT, ask a question and get a response from a Christian worldview rather than secular bias. So that's kind of how we started, right? And then there's been a bit of an evolution to the point where somewhere in 2024, kind of a year and a half into it, we kind of have an epiphany where it's like, well, you could have one chat bot and that's great, but that's not how best to contextualize the gospel. You actually need several or dozens or whatever purpose-built conversational AIs that minister to a particular demographic, right? So it is very different. It's a very different thing to minister to a Western atheist than it is to a Middle Eastern Muslim, right? That's a completely different kettle of fish. And so, you hearken back to things like, Paul at Mars Hill, right? Like if you remember that story, like in Athens, like he's talking to the Greeks, right? And he's using kind of philosophical terms and saying, and playing off of their situation and their kind of, their situation in terms of, polytheism and so forth. And so, in the same way, we're able to create kind of bespoke agents that will be programmed in such a way that will minister to a particular people group and kind of use language that they would be more familiar with. Not only when I say language, I'm not just talking about like the spoken language, but also the vocabulary itself, right? So for example, for a Muslim seeker, we use the word Isa instead of Jesus, right? Because that's the Muslim term for the prophet Jesus, right? And so, and then in a similar way, we're able to kind of loop in Quranic verses by saying like, hey, like this is what the Quran says about Jesus. Hey, check this out. Like that actually loops into what the Bible says. And here's a comparison or contrast or whatever. And so that epiphany kind of in mid 2024 kind of set us on a course where we're no longer just a conversational AI that people can go to, but we're actually a platform whereby missional organizations can create their own bespoke conversational AIs that minister to the people that they want to, and so we can kind of plug into their media to movement kind of workflows or any kind of situation that they want to plug into their digital strategy. We can kind of plug in with integrations and so forth as well.
Yeah, there's so much in what you said right there, but let's back up and chew away at some of it. So you've created an AI, a specific multiple AI agents that adapt to different global cultures. You're talking about the Muslims speaking Isa instead of Jesus, and using more language that is more not necessarily dictionary correct, but more comfortable in the modern cultures of that. Like, how was that trying to get the AI to adapt to different cultures, shaping away from just, a lot of times when I work with AI, it's mostly general think, like from a religious standpoint, from a practical standpoint, from a language standpoint. Like, I know you can tailor to an individual, but you're talking all these different cultures and everything. What was that experience like to try to get AI to stay focused on a specific people group culture?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll take our first example that when in mid 2024 we kind of had that realization. Our first stab at things was in fact that Muslim serving chatbot, and so what we did essentially was we partnered with several different ministries that already had content that ministered to the Muslim population, and then we coupled that with a partnership with several individuals who were more familiar than I was about ministering to that people group, right? Because I grew up in east coast of China, not a whole lot of Muslim activity there, right? So that's not my area of expertise. But what we'll do is we'll bring in other ministries or even just people who are familiar with it to help us frame the prompt engineering. And for those of you who aren't aware, prompt engineering is basically crafting the instructions for a chat bot so that it will kind of respond the way you want it to. And so there's two key things that I kind of mentioned there. One is what we call a corpus, which is a knowledge base of information by which the chatbot can draw on that information. And the second part is the prompt engineering, and that's the instruction set. How do you use that information? How do you respond? What vocabulary do you use? And that kind of thing. And so what we have now is kind of a really broad-ranging corpus that's backing our agents, and our agents can then refer to that content. The way I explain it a lot is, nowadays most folks have at least dabbled with some form of ChatGPT, and if you haven't, you should definitely try, right? But they're very comfortable with giving, say, a ChatGPT a bunch of information and just saying, summarize this for me. I'm too lazy. I don't want to read the whole thing, right? And even though these commercial models like OpenAI's ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude or whatever, they're trained to be kind of religiously pluralistic, right? So they don't want to stand anybody's religion or anything like that. Even though that's the case, they don't really inject their worldview when they're just doing a straightforward task like summarizing text, right? And so what the corpus allows us to do is we have that text for it to summarize. Somebody asks a question like, who is Jesus, right? Well, we're not just going to go and say a religiously pluralistic answer, which is like, oh, he's one among many gods or whatever, right? We're going to actually grab the corpus, some really good content from apologetics and evangelistic organizations, and we're gonna just essentially tell the AI, hey, we don't care what you think, right? Just tell us summarize this content that we already have, right? And so that's how we're able to ground the models in biblical truth, is because we're curating these sources and giving the context to these models and simply giving them a straightforward task. Just synthesize and summarize this content that we already have for you.
And that's where some of the organization partnerships, which we're talking about with platforms, where now you're allowing other organizations to contribute to the source material to refine and better align in different contexts, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so in the case that I mentioned with the Muslim serving chatbot, we partnered with some of the authors of answeringislam.org, in case the audience is familiar with that. There's a really good ministry out of Columbia University, actually, called the Zwemer Center. Samuel Zwemer was kind of like the father of Mid-Eastern Muslim missions kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So there's an organization for that, and then a couple other organizations that kind of had some great content online. We kind of got their permission. And by the way, just a really sidebar on that, like, we know that it's kind of a hot topic with regards to kind of like copyright law and everything like that. We get permission from the authors for everything we use in the corpus. Wow. It's an ethically kind of gray area in the courts right now. Anthropic's had some pretty good victories recently, but nonetheless, we want to, especially given the manner in which we're trying to promote this ministry, we're trying to be ethically absolutely above board, and so we never put anything we don't have permission to use into the corpus.
No, I appreciate that, and we've had conversations about some of the legality and stuff in previous episodes, but that's good. So you're pulling material from other places and getting it into the AI as source material that it can then regurgitate and feedback be a conversation prompts and things with people in different contexts. By the way, how many we're talking about Muslim a lot, which is fine, but how many different contexts are we looking at globally?
Yeah, so during that pivotal point in 2024, we the initial plan was like, hey, as a first party vendor, let's actually create all these worldview specific chatbots ourselves, right? And so that was kind of a pivot point where we're like, you know what, we're not the experts in all this. What we really need to do is come alongside other ministries that have these use cases and use their expertise and content to produce these chatbots, right? So now at this point, like we have one for Muslim seekers, we have one for kind of naturalist scientists, because we have lots of material from like the Discovery Institute, Reasons to Believe, those kinds of folks. Mm-hmm. And we have ones that are more using the more like Socratic method. It's actually pretty interesting because there's a lot of opinions out there about like what's okay and what's not okay. We might get into that later, but the Socratic one is more like ask questions, nudge, don't just give an answer, right? Whereas some of our other ones just kind of give you an answer. So we have, to date on our platform, I think the count is up to like 120 or so different agents. And that's, some of them are our demos, but a lot of them are other ministries either playing around with it or in production.
Even things like implementing a Socratic method that's more the tone of the conversation and the posture of the AI even adjust based on the agent. I didn't realize that. That's interesting. So, and I'm going to show some ignorance, but like, I know some languages are right to left versus left to right, and some of that, like you're adapting for that. How do you? I'm curious. How do you, like, for a Jewish someone that's maybe a Jew that's asking some questions? How would the AI handle something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually support right now 192 languages, and that's basically like the base models, the newest frontier base models like ChatGPT-5, for example, just got released. Support anywhere in the neighborhood of like 50 to 80 languages natively. But then on top of that, right, we also have a real-time translation module. And so that opens up, some of those less spoken languages, right? And I can show a demo of that a little bit later. And so Hebrew is one of the languages that actually is more well supported by a lot of these. And so the native capabilities handle it pretty well. We actually have a partner ministry. I'll give a shout out since he gave a shout out to me on a separate podcast, Humble Burger Ministries, where this guy with, a Jewish guy, or Messianic Jew, I should say, is currently actively engaged in ministry to the Jewish people with his chatbot, and he's using our platform to do so as well.
Interesting. So are you finding that people, I do want to get into the demo here in a little bit. Are you finding that people are open to the idea of AI speaking, that they're terrified of this idea, that they're angry at this idea? I'm sure you're all over the gamut. What are you kind of seeing here?
Exactly. Yeah, all of the above, right? So attitudes have changed quite a bit just in the last 2 years that we've been doing this. At the beginning of it, I was kind of scared to bring it up. I kind of use different verbiage to kind of like ease into the AI conversation with folks, because I know there was a lot more opposition, especially in Christian circles, right? And it's a very kind of theologically heavy topic. But in the last, I'd say year or so, it's really the exception to the rule now, where somebody says, oh, like you're doing AI, I want to have nothing to do with you. In general, I think ministries are starting to kind of wake up to the opportunity and starting to realize at least that this is just another technology with its own unique characteristics, but still a technology. It didn't surprise God. He knew exactly what was going to happen. And he's sovereign over it, and we can use it to help fulfill the Great Commission.
Well, I tell you, even at a personal level, I can remember using ChatGPT early on and doing the, which God of all the religions, which God is real, and having it answer the, a pluralistic or a general or a PC politically correct answer. And, and that was always the hesitancy for me, and not that I'm not by far, I'm not an AI expert, but it was always the difficulty of really utilizing this, because I didn't know how to get it down and to aim it. But it sounds like you've really developed an incredible method to keep it focused in such a way to be useful. Do you mind maybe taking a minute here and maybe showing us a little bit how it works?
Yeah, absolutely, love to. So what I'm going to show you first is this is kind of our flagship. So everything that we produce, first party, we kind of consider more of like a demo. Now there are quite a few people using this, just to be fair, right? And also to be fair, a lot of them are in North America, but given our language capabilities and so forth, we actually have pretty high usage in other parts of the world. But anyway, so this is at Apologist.ai, and so if you want to just give it a try, you're welcome to come here and kind of hit it. Recently, we passed the threshold where one person is using one of our AI agents every minute of the day for every day.
Wow.
So that's thousands of people using it every single day, and so we're really excited about kind of the growth there. So you'll see, in this case, this particular demo has been instructed to give kind of like a one-page essay kind of style. So it's a little bit longer than say you would want like on a phone or something like that. But that's kind of the use case in this one. But it kind of goes through an argument. I'm not going to kind of belabor it, and then also it'll show some media. So we, in addition to our text content, we also have content partners that have, YouTube videos and all kinds of different media, podcasts, all that kind of stuff. And then we can expose related media to the prompt, right? So that's actually what's happening here is prompt gets asked, and then behind the scenes, our AI our platform is going out and getting that related content, and then mingling that content as a reference point for the AI to answer the question. And then at the same time, it's also searching our corpus for related media to that question, and kind of exposing that down there. And then you can kind of look here and kind of get some more media as well. Importantly as well, we cite all of our sources, right? So not only are we trying to stay ethically above board, but actually there's something in it in addition to the general, good of the kingdom and so forth. There's actually something in it for these ministries that give us content as well, as they get some exposure, right? So we've got All About God, got questions, and something from Ligonier here, right? So and then that link can link off to their, place to either a URL to read the full article or purchase a book or what have you, right? So that's kind of how it works in a general sense. Again, this one is programmed specifically to give kind of one of those lengthier answers, but that's not, always what we do. We also have, let me go over to, actually, let's see. Yeah, so I'm going to show you an example in Arabic, and I'm just going to highlight another kind of feature that we have. So while this is going, so I don't speak Arabic, by the way, so I've been told that it does well. I'll leave it at that. This one is actually, we actually support several different models under the hood. This one actually is using the DeepSeek model, right? So a reasoning model. And that one happens to kind of perform a little bit better in Arabic. But you mentioned kind of the right to left, Jeff.
Sure.
So that's this example of that going on right here. And the other thing I wanted to highlight here as well is, it's one thing to get somebody who's curious about, Christianity or just has like a faith-based question to engage with a chatbot. But most of the time, what we would say is we really want them to get in conversation with a human being, right? So that's where the digital missionaries come in, right? And so yes, AI can be used to kind of start the conversation, knock out some really good, answers to questions and stuff like that. But the handoff to a human being is very important to us, right? And it's very important to our partner ministries. And so what we have is a capability of not only letting the AI answer, but then also an area kind of below the answer that we call the kind of a call to action, right? So this can be pretty much anything. It's for anybody technical, it's arbitrary HTML basically. So it can be, a full bleed banner like this. This is an example of, a banner ad to send people over to watch The Chosen TV program in Arabic. It could just as well be just about anything, right? So that's completely customizable. And actually, recently we released a change so that you can have multiple different calls to action that kind of spring up at different points in the user's conversation.
Wow. How many of the people that are using this, or the organizations that are using this, are implementing physical, where it's traffic hopping to some sort of a physical person or a call center? Do you have any idea on that?
I don't have numbers for you offhand, but I will say that just this past week, we're pretty deep in discussions with an organization. I don't know if I should, for the sake of the organization, reveal who they are, but a major organization operating in East Asia and Southeast Asia. Okay. And what they're doing essentially is they're using these calls to action to. We have like a share link here. So if you want to, if you click on this icon here, it'll share the essentially this output, and then you can send it to somebody. So we're piping that share link through that call to action in the link, and then it's going off to Facebook Messenger, where a human chat operator can then have that link and know what the AI was, what the conversation was up to that point, and then start to carry on the conversation from there, right? So we're really focused right now on partnering with ministries to facilitate those kinds of integrations and interactions where we can, allow them to hand off to another human being, or sometimes, especially in more sensitive areas, sometimes it's not, directly handing off to a human being, but maybe it's like scan this QR code or, contact this person, something like that. So it's really pretty wide open, and we've seen a lot of use cases.
Interesting. What is that's cool. Talk to me a little bit more about the software. What else are we looking at here?
Sure. So maybe I'll just show another. This is I don't want to geek out too much, but I know at least part of your audience.
We're a bunch of geeks here. You can feel free to geek. It's okay. I give you permission.
So I'm gonna give a shout out for our language translation capability. So like I mentioned, the base models, depending on which one you pick, and we do support I think about 2 or 3 dozen now. But all the latest models, we have ChatGPT 5, and the kind of the recent ones from Claude, and a lot of open source ones as well. But when we layer real-time translation on top of that, that widens it out to almost 200 languages. And so this is an example of Amharic, which is the national language of Ethiopia. So one of the less internationally spoken languages. And so I'll just give an example. And I do have somebody who checked this and said it's actually pretty good. But what's actually happening here, it's going pretty fast, considering the fact that basically we're doing that whole reference to the corpus, coming back, and then generating a response. But then we layer on top of that this real-time translation. So we have this technical problem where the AI is outputting content in English, right? But then we have to, while it's streaming, we're chunking it up and paragraph by paragraph sending it out to a translation service to get back. And so that's all happening kind of transparently. And so you saw it's a little bit slower than maybe English, but it's still pretty fast. You're seeing it kind of come down paragraph by paragraph, so the user doesn't have to wait for the whole thing before it gets translated.
Yeah. What is the global usage of this compared to the U.S.? I know U.S. is somewhat more technologically advanced, but smartphones are all over the place globally, and it seems like a lot of your organizations are more globally based. I'm just curious what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you mind? I'm gonna switch the share to another tab here. Are you seeing this okay, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm seeing that. Countries reached.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so this is kind of, and I can show some statistics here, but basically this is purposely excluding kind of the U.S. and Canada because the truth is, right now, most of our usage is in North America, to be fair. But probably, I haven't looked at it recently, but probably like at least 25% is international as well. And the more interesting thing about that, though, is where is happening in the world relative to other spots. You'll see Indonesia here. So that's actually a heavy usage area for us right now, and especially Singapore. In fact, Singapore is just absolutely blowing up. And that makes sense too, because if you look at the languages other than English that are in use, almost half of the non-English usage is in Chinese. And so of course in Singapore you got basically Mandarin Chinese and English are kind of the two main languages there. And so overall we're pretty pleased with that, but we definitely have a lot of growth to do. Kind of about in like last 6 months or so, up until 6 months, we've been more focused on generating the corpus and product development, stuff like that. And about 6 months ago, we finally said okay, this is we're good enough. We need to focus, pivot a little bit, and focus on partnering with ministries, getting it out into the field. And so we're hoping that growth will definitely increase abroad as well.
Is there any, talking about China, Mandarin Chinese? Is there any security concerns? Can they access this safely, or do they have to go through any back channels? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's interesting. Last fall, because of my, having grown up in China, I was invited to a China missions kind of conference, and there was a lot of discussion about that. Obviously, the great, the great firewall of China, they call it, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of ways you can mitigate that through using VPNs in some cases, but the most foolproof way is to just smuggle, offline devices basically. And so we're kind of exploring that a little bit as well, because if you think about it, like, the stats show that, like, probably about 75%, probably about 3/4 of the world is connected online through some mechanism, but that still leaves a lot of people in, regions where there just, isn't access, or to your point, Jeff, like, closed countries. It's not only China or North Korea, but also, Middle East, where there's not as much religious tolerance as well. And so the idea that we've been kind of, experimenting with a little bit and talking with a few folks about is, can we train a small language model, which is just, basically an AI, a language AI, but that's smaller, right, in a footprint, and can we then embed that onto a device and then just smuggle it in on the device? And to do that, we would probably use some sort of like higher powered reasoning model to fine tune a smaller language model, and then find a way to kind of package at least portions of the corpus that could be representative, and then allow the AI to function in an offline capacity.
That is fascinating. I did not even know you could do that, but that's crazy. Even like, it's I hear like the AI wearables and some of that, and so it's almost a precursor to that with the gospel. Like how do you get a smaller version of the AI that you can smuggle across? I can remember my parents actually. My mom was like smuggling Bibles into like Romania and things like this back in the day, and the church I was a part of was smuggling Bibles into Russia, and so now it's, hey, let's smuggle artificial intelligence. What is I don't want to get lost in this because I will, but what is a small device that will have artificial intelligence on it? Are we talking like a smartphone? Like what?
Yeah, in fact, I've already. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I talked to a guy who has a nonprofit who's building Android-based phones, and we talked about a potential partnership for this exact use case. Again, I don't want to anybody on, but yeah, just generally speaking. But there's a lot of thought around, been put around this, as like, how do you reach, unreached countries or at least countries that are closed up, and get kind of these materials into them.
Yeah. I know a lot of our people are, obviously in China, WeChat's a popular platform, but WeChat is run by communist China. And so probably not a good idea to embed this in WeChat. But, a lot of our people globally utilize WhatsApp. A lot here in America are utilizing Discord as well for some asynchronous. Have you guys looked at embedding or creating bots or tools or somehow integrating this into some of those platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a working WhatsApp integration right now, and actually one of the volunteers on our team just finished up a Telegram integration as well.
Oh,
and,
cool.
Most importantly, with regards to that, is we have kind of I don't want to get too technical, but we have kind of like the framework to quickly spin these kind of integrations up. In fact, the individual who finished up the Telegram one spent, I wrote 99% of the code of what you see, right? And so another person came in and within a week was able to spin up a whole integration with Telegram. And so we're pretty hopeful that, as we meet ministries with particular use cases, we can spin up different integrations in the future very rapidly.
Yeah, I'm curious, just as you're talking about this, how many people are on your team? What's dev, at least dev wise? Like, how many devs do you have working on this?
So it's an interesting question. So we're all volunteer right now, right? So we're actively fundraising and trying to get full time onto it. And so I do most of the programming, but then we also have kind of a misfit band of other volunteers who are kind of helping out. And people will come and go as they have time and everything like that. But probably on the engineering side, at any given point in time, we probably have like 3 or 4 ish. And then, of course, it's not all just product development. It's also marketing and everything like that. So we do have a leadership team, again, all volunteer, of about 7 people right now, and who help with kind of marketing and positioning and business development, all that kind of stuff.
This incredible product you're looking at with that's 100% volunteer based or majority volunteer based. 100%, that's great. What's your day job?
So I lead a product team for a social media management company.
Okay.
out of Boulder. So yeah, I'm still in the startup world, and have that, and I bring that ethos to the nonprofit. So it's kind of a weird thing to treat a nonprofit like a startup, but that's pretty much how we operate.
Yeah, I mean we are right there with you 100%, and so it's a fun road working with volunteers and remote and startup, like all that put together. It's challenging, but it certainly is fun. So let me ask this question with the AI. Oftentimes you'll get into a situation when you're having a conversation with someone and it's like, okay, let's just agree to disagree. I can no longer have this conversation without shouting at you, and I feel that you're about to do the same thing with me. How do you handle that in an artificial intelligence situation? Does the AI just keep going, or like what's the deal?
I mean, it depends on the prompt engineering, but one thing I will say is that, and I didn't really cover this before, but one of the advantages to AI is that it doesn't get mad, right? Like, so there's not like this dynamic where like you're going to feel judged, like talking to it. And so what we found, and, frankly, all of our usage is anonymous. And so we don't know who's using it, right? But we know what they're saying, right? And we're logging all of that. And so we have all kinds of, interesting conversations come across where people are, being vulnerable with the AI about things that they would never talk to another human being about, or certainly not a Christian, right? Or somebody that just is an acquaintance. And so actually the anonymous aspect of AI interaction actually lets people become, more vulnerable and get kind of into some weighty topics. For example, we have a really interesting conversation that we saw from a female in Saudi Arabia, questioning her sexuality and stuff like that. Like, how do you, like, who would she have talked to in the middle of Saudi Arabia, right? You know what I mean? And so having those kinds of conversations without any fear of having judgment laid on her or anything like that is a pretty big factor. But going back to your question, it really just depends on the prompt engineering. Like the use case that you just mentioned, like, when should the AI end a conversation? It's frankly something we haven't really heavily considered, but there's no reason why we couldn't do that. Just in the same way that you can instruct it to, use a more Socratic method, you could easily say like, hey, if the conversation has gone on long and the person seems angry, just disengage. You could definitely program that in, no problem.
So, but the default right now is, the AI is just going to keep AI in until the person hangs up.
That's right.
That's fascinating. What is there, if someone does have a conversion, if someone does, want to take a next step, then that's based on the organization that's running the agent. At that point, it gets connected to the ministry, whatever that looks like. Okay.
Yeah, and so for example, one of our big partners is gotquestions.org, and then also allaboutgod.com. And I'll actually use allaboutgod.com because I think this is still the case. But both of those organizations have, at the end of every one of, it's basically question and answer format, right, on their web pages. And at the bottom, it's like, hey, here's a couple buttons. You want to find out more? You want to contact us? Yes, I've accepted Jesus. That kind of thing. And so we could use what we did actually for All About God is we implemented their exact call to action that they have on their website. In the footer, and then they go to the same places. So someone clicks on yes, I've accepted Jesus. They go to the same intake form as they do on the website.
That's great. Do you have any idea on your side what conversion rate, meaning marketing, not salvation, but maybe I do mean salvation? What's the conversion rate of this stuff?
Yeah. It's a funny topic, right? Because like we have all these ministries who are kind of indicated. What is it called? Indicated conversion or whatever is kind of the term, right? Or indicated choice or whatever to follow Jesus. So only God knows people's hearts, right? And so we all know that. But yes, we are tracking. One of the nice things about our platform is, irrespective of where you send the user in your call to action, you can do all the tracking you want on your side, but we're also tracking it as well. So we know every time somebody clicks on any part of your call to action, we are tracking that, and we will know kind of what chat conversation they had that led up to that and all that kind of good stuff. And then we're going to allow the ministries to download those conversations and hook them into whatever systems they want.
So if somebody wanted to like get involved or utilize this product, like what are the different ways somebody could like take a step in and get involved with Apologist Project?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for that. So we are always looking for more people to volunteer. So if you're interested in helping us in any capacity, and again, we need help in all kinds of areas, not just technical. Like we'd love somebody to help with our social media, etc. If you're a ministry or involved with a ministry or want to recommend us to a ministry, the first next step is just go ahead and book a demo on our website. So there's that, you'll see that button kind of plastered all over the place, because we like to get into a conversation with the ministry and really understand their use case. And that's also kind of a mechanism to make sure that, they're doing it for the right reasons or aligned reasons for us as well. And then what we do is we spin up a demo conversational AI that they can then just go and play around with for free. And then, once the usage starts going, or once they go into production with it, then only then would they start having any kind of fees.
Yeah. And what are, if you don't mind me asking here on air, like what are loose fees for something like this?
Yeah. So really low usage, we do have a free tier. So, we have like a credit-based system essentially to kind of abstract the whole token economy, right? So we basically say 1 credit in our system is 1/2 of $1 cent. And so something like a model like ChatGPT 4.0 costs 5 credits, so that equates to 2.5 cents. So every response from ChatGPT 4.0 model would cost 2.5 cents, and so we charge basically like a platform fee that is determined by the functionality you have. So if it's like fully white labelable, then you might be on a higher tier, and then we have usage-based pricing on top of that. If anybody's interested in learning more about that, you can go to apologistproject.org/pricing and see all the different and the costs and so forth.
And I'm guessing somehow they can grab a meeting with you and maybe get that translated into English. I followed most of it, but at some point I was like, I hope it reads easier than what I just heard. So
I might have to use an AI to help explain it. But yes,
very good. I'm sure you can figure that part out. So and then that would be embedding on the website or partnering with you at some level to create an agent. Like if somebody didn't want to go through the level of creating an agent, but just wanted to get your AI out there as a chatbot somehow, what would that look like?
Yeah, so we do support embedding on websites, and there are 2 common ways we do that. People are probably familiar with kind of like the customer support little chat bubble. So we do support a mechanism like that, where it's like a little chat bubble, and you click on it and it opens up a little tiny little thing in the corner where they can kind of chat with it right there. Or a lot of our ministries opt to embed it straight onto their page. For example, we recently did an implementation for Apologetics Canada where they embedded it kind of on their page, so it looks like integrated with their website more. And then we also do have an API, by the way, which I probably should have mentioned before. Which means, if you're a larger organization that has an app, several developers have kind of contacted us, and some major organizations I probably shouldn't mention have contacted us about just using our API because they already have the interface. They don't want our interface; they just want our answers, right, or our agent capabilities.
The brain, yeah.
So they can do it that way.
Yeah. That's incredible. Like I hadn't even gotten to the place of API and integrating this into a platform or an app or something that's already existing. That's beautiful. But I guess if you're doing the work to get it into like WhatsApp and Telegram, then you're already having some level of an API level able for that. So that's really cool. Show me. I'd love to maybe show 1 or 2 more samples or examples on the AI of some conversations. Do you maybe have 1 or 2 things you could show in that space?
Sure. Yeah, I'll pull up the integration with gotquestions.org. Because again, like their corpus, like if for those of you who aren't familiar, their whole website is essentially question and answer format. So it's like match made in heaven, right, for training an AI, right? So it's exactly kind of what you want. So
don't forget to share the right tab. You're on the languages used tab right now.
Thank you for catching me. All right, here we go. So this is one at gotquestions.chat, right? So this is kind of a similar thing to Apologetics Canada, what they did. So they kind of embedded on there. So they have their own kind of website frame, and they have, their little about thing that says, all that kind of stuff, right? So I don't know, let's say, how can a good God allow so much evil in the world, right? That's the Odyssey stuff. So that's how it works, right? And so you can see all this, the entirety of this is completely white labeled. They've got, their own custom footer. They didn't put a call to action down here, but they could. They've got their logo up here. They got custom information about their logo or about their organization. And then obviously, for any language that the chatbot supports, you can also have all of that information. We have a translation module on our on kind of our back end, where you can get all of the English copy, your custom copy, to be translated into all of the languages that you support as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I should mention as well, kind of just coming up, we're kind of, I already mentioned we're exploring kind of small language models, offline models. We're also getting into voice recently as well. Because if you think about it, not only is it convenient to kind of be able to, just kind of converse with an AI back and forth, right? If you don't, hands-free operation, but also, I was reminded recently from a brother who I met about there are quite a few languages that don't actually have a written, a written form, right? So they're oral only. And so the idea, it kind of fascinates me of like, how can we use, how can we use just oral transmission, like right with explaining these things, these theological in those languages. So that's kind of an area that I'd like to expand in as well. So we're kind of, we're kind of going where God leads, but also where our ministry partners lead as well. So, we're very open to kind of novel use cases for using AI and kind of spreading the gospel in kind of innovative ways.
Very cool. I've got a question here from Methos. Are you at all concerned about people, especially new people, getting confused and mistaking AI for the voice of God?
That's a great question. So there's a lot of theology there to unpack, right? And so one thing I'll just make a plug for: we wrote a white paper kind of about kind of the theology aspect of all this. It's on our website. If you go to apologist.project.org, it should be like at a banner at the top, and you can kind of click through it. But it's an extremely important question, right? So there are lines which we do not cross, right? We will not cross the line of having the AI pretend like it's a person, right? So that means we will not have the AI pray for you, right? We will give you information through the AI, right? But we will not have it pray for you or in any way, hopefully, kind of imply that it's a human being, right? And so now that being said, that's our kind of theology, right? But we are very ecumenical in the sense we do let pretty much any lowercase Orthodox Christian denomination to use the chatbot, and we'll facilitate that. We go back to the Nicene Creed for that, right? So all three branches of Christendom support that. And so we are, in spite of my own theology, which, if you're wondering, is Protestant evangelical, but that doesn't mean we will disallow, Catholic or Eastern Orthodox folks from using the chatbot and so forth. And so my caveat there is, like, I have very specific lines that I won't cross personally for my theology, but we leave it open to, the denominational preferences of the folks who are kind of using it. But I think most people would agree, like, we don't want an AI Jesus, right? We probably don't want an AI Mary. We probably don't want anything that could be construed as, an idol or some kind of, representation of a deity or anything like that. We really want to, we may have personas, right? But we're not going to, but those personas would be more like a helpful teacher, not like a representation of a deity or anything like that. And in fact, this has come up recently because, I have to guard myself against this, quite a bit, because the rate of innovation in AI is staggering right now. And so, like, recently, for example, since we do have an API and it's actually compatible with the OpenAI spec, we can now integrate with anywhere that OpenAI can integrate, right? And so one of those places was like, there was a company that had like, a video avatar, right? And you could hook up our LLM to that avatar. And so like I did like a prototype of, like, somebody asking a question. We hooked it up to our Muslim serving chatbot. Somebody asking a question about, is Isa really a god or is he a prophet, right? And you had this very, Middle Eastern looking man, like, on video speaking the output of our AI, right? And it's like, at that point, it's like, okay, is that taking it a step too far, right? Because that's like representing a real human being. And so I kind of pull it back and be like, you know what, that might be a little bit too far that we're willing to go. Never say never, but that seemed a little off to me. Whereas, like, voice, you can see that, like, it's kind of in the same vein, but you're not trying to represent some kind of image or anything like that. That's just more of a convenience factor, right? And so there's a lot of theology to unpack, but the short answer is we try to put guardrails in place that satisfy our conscience about, this representing our AI as either a human being or some kind of deity, and try to prevent it wherever we can.
Yeah, I mean, it's you keep opening up issues and challenges and things that we weren't even talking about 5 years ago at a large scale. We tried some like Hey Jin stuff where it's like, video translation, and there's actual videos of me speaking in Mandarin Chinese. And
Nice.
and I speak really good Mandarin Chinese. Like I have a friend that speaks Mandarin Chinese, and she was mad at me because she couldn't believe AI did it. That because she thought I learned Mandarin Chinese and didn't tell her. But it's just some ethical. Like, is this right? Is this the right thing? Yeah. And so I think it's good to question on that. It's. I don't know it's the right answer, but often I feel like culturally that may change over time as there's more cultural acceptance of what AI is and isn't, and what fake video or AI agents video is and is not, what's accepted and not accepted. I don't know that Jesus has an opinion whether or not it's right, but there's like a cult, and you can at me if I'm wrong, but I think it's more of a cultural acceptance. Like, are we okay using that method or not? But asking questions and pausing to evaluate is good. I would say, and it's interesting, Methos, the guy who asked the question, actually says good answer. So you got him happy. But for me, it was hey, does this actually feed into like a conversation at some point? And right. Your platform putting onus on the organizations with the call to actions and feed into their process. Like, I don't know that I would expect your organization to actually be responsible for as much as making sure there's opportunities for the organizations to do what they're doing. And you're just the gateway to get them more connectivity. Methos goes on to say there will undoubtedly be AI cults soon if there aren't already. Yeah, I don't know that I want to get pulled into that conversation today, but you're probably not right. It was funny. We just rolled out a couple days ago as a part of our town hall. We rolled out our AI agent through we've done some stuff with ChatGPT, and then we're working with an organization called Topos that basically encoded all like 1,000 blogs, 800 blogs, almost 1,000 hours of video, like just encoded it all in this thing. And so we're experimenting with them on it. But jokingly, we're calling it Lex. Now, I know you said you're not going to put a name on it. We put a name on it.
Just to be fair, I don't think it's wrong to have a persona, right? I just think that if asked, right, like an AI should admit that it's an AI kind of thing. That's all.
No, that I do agree with. But we named it Lex because after Lex Luthor, because at the end of the world, this AI thing is going to try to take over the world. Somebody's going to try to do something with it. But let's have fun and use it while we can. That's all I'm saying. And so, the conversations about weaponizing and who does what, and the ethics and legality, whatever. I am always more bull in that situation than bear. Let's be aggressive and do whatever we can for the kingdom until we can't do it for the kingdom anymore. And so,
I do agree. Sorry to interrupt.
No, please go.
I want to pull on that thread a little bit, because I think there is like this, risk aversion, right? Over the top risk aversion in ministry. And I just want to call out, that I agree with you on this, Jeff. Like, the early church was not conservative in their, risk assessment. Like they, martyrs, right? Like they were dying for what, and I'm not saying that we ought to be, cavalier or anything like that, but it's also, I think the opposite extreme is extremely harmful, right? Like Jesus does not call us to be, risk averse. Like the parable of the talents comes to mind, right? Like the servant who buries his treasure in the ground. Like that was not rewarded by Christ, right? It was, or the master in that parable, right? Like what was rewarded was like somebody take a measured, investment, and in that case financial, but also like I want to encourage everyone like take risks for the gospel, right? Like that's how the kingdom grows, right? Not just by keeping it, to ourselves or always being so risk averse, but I think we do need to within reason take risks for spreading the gospel. I think that's how the kingdom grows.
Yeah. And that surprises me a little bit. Like, if I can just poke that bear a little bit, it surprises me that you have more success in the US, maybe it's based on your exposure, than you do globally. Yeah. I at a personal level, I have found the global audience far more aggressive than the US audience, mostly based because globally we're working with more missionaries and global missions organizations, and in the US we're working with more churches, and as near as I can tell, missiology is far more aggressive than ecclesiology. And as a result of that, like the missions organizations globally are like, let's go. US churches are like much more cautious is the safe word to use there. But anyway, for what it's worth, my opinions from the side. And once again, if you have a hate mail on that, you can at Andy at theChurch.digital. Andy would love to hear from you on that. Hey, this has been a blast, man. Jake, I am so glad we got to do that. And I was wanting to crack a joke at the beginning where I would call you Jake from State Farm. And I'm proud that I made it all the way to the end without making that inappropriate joke. And so...
I'm not wearing khakis, just in case you're wondering.
No khakis. What is it, a red shirt that he always wears? Whatever.
Yeah,
and so
shirt.
That's funny. Awesome. Well, hey, this has been a blast. As we're landing the plane here, Jake, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to encourage y'all. I think the work that Jeff's doing at the Church Digital is just fabulous, right? So I think if I could leave you with anything, it's kind of our motto, which is meet them where they are, and meeting them where they are. Traditionally would mean, where they are in their spiritual journey. And then sometimes it's taken to mean, kind of where they are geographically. But let's not forget, I think the primary frontier right now is digital. And, we're working hard to meet them where they are through wherever they hang out, in the digital space. So I just want to encourage all of you to continue to think through that and find innovative ways to minister to folks in digital spaces.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for that. Jake, you can find apologistproject.org and Apologist.ai to interact directly with the artificial intelligence. Jake Carlson, founder of Apologist.org. Jake, thanks for coming on, man. This has been a blast, but we're going to land the plane. For Jake, this is Jeff at the Church Digital. Thanks for hanging out with us today on the show. We'll see you next time on the stream. Have a good one.